Today on the program, we discuss judicial independence. Is it a reality or a mere slogan? Our guest is a legal practitioner, F.A. Tomi, a senior partner at Chief Rotimi Williams Chambers, who believes that there should be transparency in selection of judges and advocates, and that remuneration, compensation, pension, and even allowances of judges be at least equal to that of senators, if not higher. Otherwise, justice becomes very expensive for the common man. Also, ahead of the general elections 2019, we look at the process of political parties, primaries, the realities, and the law. My guest is a senior advocate of Nigeria who says law need to be strengthened to ensure transparency for political parties organizing primaries. We'll also bring you highlights of the arbitration conference as seasoned arbitrators discuss its effectiveness in dispute resolution. There you have it, the lineup on this episode of Law Weekly. Hello and welcome to the program. I'm Millicent Walker. Just another week gone by as Nigeria turned 58, the independence of the judiciary came to the fore as one of the important factors for the rule of law to thrive in the country. As an arm responsible for interpreting the laws and trial of cases involving citizens, organizations and the state, it has an important role to play, free from all forms of interference whatsoever. And my guest in this interview said as much on the challenges facing that arm of government and the solutions.
Judicial independence is really the ability of the judiciary to enforce its constitutional powers without undue or improper influence by any other arm of the government. Here you have to take into consideration the appointment of judicial officers, the disciplinary measures of judicial officers, and then compensation and remunerations of judicial officers.
Would you say that the Nigerian judiciary is independent?
Well, that's interesting because if you go by the Constitution and you're taking maybe separation of powers, you say yes because you have the judicial arm of government, you have the legislative arm of government and the executive, as guaranteed by sections of the Constitution, I believe 4, 5 and 6 of the Constitution. But to an extent, I would say it's not truly independent.
What is the role of the National Judicial Council to delivering its mandate as the apex of the nation's judiciary?
Well, I would say they've been quite effective, but then there have been limitations. Don't forget, Section 153 creates the NJC, right? But then the NJC is really an executive body because the NJC is made up of the Chief Justice of the Federation, other justices maybe of the Supreme Court, some other justices of the Supreme Court, and then 5 members of the Nigerian Bar Association and 2 non-judicial persons. But then who appoints the Chief Justice? Is the President. Yes, it might be rectified or varied by the Senate, but then the Senate too is the legislature, so there's no strict independence in that way.
What is your take on financial autonomy for the judiciary to be able to perform optimally?
Well, the Constitution, I believe Section 121 and maybe 84 guarantees financial autonomy. But again, what's financial autonomy? You know, where it says that the funds or remuneration of the judiciary or the judicial arm of government should come straight from the consolidated revenue fund. But it's only really for recurrent expenditure. And then what about the capital expenditures? So where the Chief Justice of either the state or the Federation has to go cap in hand, applying, or should I say begging, the executive for funds for the judiciary, then how do you have the financial autonomy? So then don't forget that yes, the Constitution says so, you have financial autonomy. Again, it does not give you the power of enforcement. You have the legislature, for example, they sit and they determine their allowances, their remunerations, but then that is not done for the judiciary. I've not heard of judicial immunity, really, the way you have the executive immunity, where you can't just touch them in the first place. Like I earlier mentioned, look at what happened. You say a judge is corrupt simply because he has given judgments against a party you are affiliated with or you represent.
There is a belief that judges are perhaps responsible for maintaining public integrity and also that the public respects the judiciary. Do you agree? Is there a public trust?
Yeah, I believe once you take the oath of office, then you have the responsibility to give sound judgments. So yes, you cannot blame others, you cannot blame poor remuneration because you actually know what you're going into. We all know that justice delayed is justice denied. So if they spend more time or are faster in giving their judgments so that people come to them, then the public will trust you. Once they know that it's corruption-free, you give clear judgments that even the layman would understand, then no one can come or turn around and say, oh, you're corrupt, really. Because then the judgment speaks for itself. And then, yes, it behoves on the judiciary to have a system of checking themselves. There should be, maybe the NJC should have a way of even reviewing these judgments. There should be transparency, in the disciplinary measures and everything, the disciplinary process and all. And then once they put this in place for themselves, by themselves, then I believe we'll have a better judiciary and, well, a more transparent, corrupt-free judiciary.
So if you were to recommend solutions to judicial independence in Nigeria, what would it be?
I would say there should be a transparency in selection or appointment of justices. I should say there should be an independent body that fixes remuneration, compensation, pension of justice. I should say, or I will say, that the remuneration, compensation, allowances, everything should be at least equal to that of the senators, or if not higher. This is a third arm of government, and I believe it is the arm really closer to the people. It's the arm where the people should have access to every day. If you don't do these things, then you make justice very expensive for even the common man, and that defeats the whole purpose.